20 underappreciated 1980s-era bands. Worth rediscovering. What if the best bands of the 80s weren't the ones you always hear about? Beneath the surface of big hair and stadium tours were artists, crafting unforgettable music that flew under the radar. Get ready to rediscover 20 underrated gems from the 1980s. Bands that deserve the spotlight but helped shape a decade from the shadows. Anvil. If you've ever thought Anvil was just another over-the-top metal act like Spinal Tap, think again. This Canadian heavy metal band isn't a joke. They're legends in their own right. Anvil is the real deal, a group powered by raw talent, grit, and a love for music that's never wavered. Formed back in 1981, Anvil carved out their space in the metal scene with blistering guitar riffs, pounding drums, and a high-octane stage presence that fans still rave about. They may not be a household name everywhere, but in places like Germany, Anvil is revered, packing out venues with loyal fans who live for their electrifying live shows. But what really sets Anvil apart is their influence. Bands like Metallica, Slayer, and Guns N' Roses didn't just enjoy their records, they've credited Anvil as a major inspiration. That says a lot about their role in shaping the sound and spirit of metal. Fronted by the passionate and relentless Steve Lips Kudlow, Anvil has released 19 studio albums, a testament to their dedication. Still, it was the 2008 documentary Anvil, the story of Anvil that reintroduced them to the world. Honest, emotional, and even heartbreaking at times, it showed the struggle behind the spotlight and made people fall in love with Anvil all over again. Haha. When you hear the name Aha, chances are your mind jumps straight to that unforgettable pencil sketch animation from the Take On Me music video. It's one of the most iconic visuals of the 1980s, and the song was a chart-topping smash that helped define the decade. But here's the thing, Aha is so much more than just one memorable hit. This Norwegian trio wasn't a one-and-done success. Their follow-up single, The Sun Always Shines on TV, climbed into the Billboard Top 20 and showcased a sound that was just as epic, if not more atmospheric, than their debut. Aha's signature style fused shimmering synths with emotional depth, all tied together by Morten Harket's crystal-clear, soaring vocals. Their debut album, Hunting High and Low, was a synth-pop triumph that captivated audiences far beyond Norway's borders. And they didn't just make waves at home. When Aha came to the US to promote their music, they got a little help from Gina Schock of the Go-Go's, who played drums for their high-profile TV performances on shows like American Bandstand and Solid Gold. Back in Norway, they're nothing short of legends. They've even been knighted for their cultural contributions, and they're still going strong, releasing their 11th studio album in 2022. Clearly, Aha's story is far bigger than one song. Boogie Down Productions. When Boogie Down Productions, better known as BDP, hit the scene in 1987 with Criminal Minded, it wasn't just another rap debut. It was a seismic shift in hip-hop. This wasn't about party tracks or catchy hooks. BDP brought grit, depth, and reality to the mic. With a raw, aggressive edge and unmistakable Jamaican flavor woven through their sound, Criminal Minded helped lay the foundation for what would become gangsta rap. The original lineup featured the formidable KRS-One on the mic, the versatile D-Nice, and DJ Scott LaRock, a rising star behind the turntables. Together, they painted vivid portraits of life in the South Bronx, confronting violence, inequality, and the day-to-day struggles of inner-city living. They didn't sugarcoat it, they told it like it was. But just as their star began to rise, tragedy struck. DJ Scott LaRock was shot and killed not long after their debut dropped, a heartbreaking loss that shook the hip-hop world. Instead of retreating, KRS-One doubled down, steering BDP into new territory. His lyrics evolved, tackling education, politics, and justice with razor-sharp insight. BDP wasn't just making music, they were starting conversations. They gave a voice to the voiceless and used hip-hop as a platform for truth. Their influence still echoes through the genre to this day. Cinderella. Cinderella may have strutted onto the scene during the height of 80s hair metal, but don't let the teased hair and leather fool you. This band had substance. While they shared the glam image of bands like Bon Jovi, Poison, and Mötley Crüe, Cinderella didn't quite reach the same pop culture stratosphere. Still, what they did bring to the table was something those other acts often lacked: soul. Fronted by the gritty, unmistakable voice of Tom Keifer, Cinderella stood apart with a sound that was as bluesy as it was heavy. Their 1986 debut, Night Songs, gave us arena-shaking hits like Shake Me and Nobody's Fool. But it was their 1988 follow-up, Long Cold Winter, where the band really stretched out musically. The blues influence came to the forefront, giving their hard rock roots a depth and authenticity that elevated them beyond the hair metal mold. Keifer's songwriting matured, weaving soulful guitar licks with raw, emotional storytelling. Something rare in a scene often criticized for style over substance. And even as musical trends shifted in the 90s, Cinderella stuck to their guns, doubling down on their blues rock foundation rather than chasing trends. They might not have been the flashiest band on MTV, but Cinderella earned their place in rock history by fusing glam and grit with heart. And that's a legacy worth remembering. Fine Young Cannibals. Fine Young Cannibals didn't just arrive on the scene, they reinvented it. Born out of the breakup of the Beat, this British trio took a bold turn away from ska punk and stepped into a sound all their own, blending pop, soul, rock, and even a bit of funk into something truly distinctive. Led by the unmistakable voice of Roland Gift, Fine Young Cannibals made waves right out of the gate with their self-titled 1985 debut. Tracks like Johnny Come Home offered haunting social commentary wrapped in a groove-heavy melodic package. And their cover of Elvis Presley's Suspicious Minds? A revelation, reworking the classic with a fresh, soulful energy that felt both respectful and radical. But it was their sophomore release, The Raw and the Cooked, that really put them on the map in 1989. Fueled by the massive success of She Drives Me Crazy and Good Thing, the album rocketed to the top of the charts. You couldn't turn on the radio or MTV without hearing Roland's falsetto cutting through the speakers. It was a defining moment in late 80s pop music. Even though they only released 2 studio albums, Fine Young Cannibals left a lasting mark. They proved that pop could be smart, soulful, and stylish, all at the same time. If you could see any of these bands live in their prime, who would you pick? Exodus. Exodus might not be a household name like Metallica, but ask any diehard metalhead, and they'll tell you, Exodus is thrash royalty. Born in the heart of the Northern California scene, this band didn't just ride the thrash metal wave, they helped build it. Formed in the early 80s, Exodus erupted with a sound that was fast, fierce, and totally unapologetic. Their 1985 debut, Bonded by Blood, is now considered one of the most influential thrash albums of all time. That record, along with Pleasures of the Flesh, 1987, and Fabulous Disaster, 1989, captured the band's raw energy and relentless aggression. Each track hits like a sledgehammer, ripping riffs, pounding drums, and lyrics that pull no punches. Exodus didn't chase fame, they chased ferocity. And in doing so, they inspired an entire generation of metal bands. Testament, Death Angel, Anthrax. They've all pointed to Exodus as a key influence in shaping the genre's signature sound and attitude. The band's lineup has evolved over time, but 2 names stand tall. Guitarist Gary Holt, whose blistering solos and no-nonsense attitude have become legend, and vocalist Steve Zetro Souza, whose raspy roar defines the Exodus sound. And here's a fun fact. Metallica's Kirk Hammett actually got his start in Exodus. So yeah, Exodus might not have topped the charts, but their legacy? Absolutely untouchable. The Fixx. The Fixx may not always be front and center in 80s retrospectives, but make no mistake, they were one of the most intriguing and thoughtful bands of the new wave era. Led by the often underappreciated Cy Curnin, whose distinctive voice and lyrical depth set the tone, the Fixx brought a cerebral edge to pop rock that made them stand out from the pack. Their big breakthrough came with 1983's Reach the Beach, An album that delivered not just catchy hooks but meaningful messages. Tracks like One Thing Leads to Another and Saved by Zero didn't just climb the charts, they lingered. These songs dominated MTV and radio alike, thanks to their slick production, tight arrangements, and Kihn's haunting vocal delivery. But the Fixx didn't stop there. While later singles like Are We Ourselves and Secret Separation reached the top 40, they never quite hit the same cultural nerve in the US. Still, their work remained consistently rich and thought-provoking. One overlooked treasure is Deeper and Deeper from the Streets of Fire soundtrack. It's an atmospheric gem that deserves more recognition. A perfect example of the band's emotional and sonic range. The Fixx may be best known for a few early hits, but their discography is full of smart, stylish music that continues to resonate with fans who crave depth behind the melody. The Greg Kihn Band. The Greg Kihn Band might not be the first name that springs to mind when you think of 80s rock, but they were a key part of the Bay Area music scene, and they carved out a space all their own with an irresistible mix of power pop and rock. Formed in the mid-1970s, the band built a loyal following on the West Coast, but it wasn't until the release of Rock and Roll in 1981 that they truly hit their stride. That album gave us the breakup song, They Don't Write 'Em, a punchy, instantly relatable anthem about lost love. With its hooky guitar lines and conversational lyrics, it became a staple on rock radio and helped launch the band into national recognition. Then came Jeopardy in 1983, a massive hit with a chorus that stuck in your head for days. The song broke into the Billboard Top 10 and became their biggest commercial success. Fun fact, it even inspired Weird Al Yankovic to parody it with I Lost on Jeopardy, cementing its place in pop culture. But the Greg Kihn Band wasn't just a flash in the pan. They kept the momentum going throughout the 80s, putting out 12 studio albums packed with melodic, guitar-driven rock. And Greg Kihn himself? Still writing, still performing, still rocking. Proof that catchy songs and heartfelt lyrics never go out of style. Front 242. If you're into industrial or electronic music, there's no skipping over Front 242. Hailing from Belgium, this trailblazing group helped define an entire genre in the early 1980s. Their sound, harsh, rhythmic, and unapologetically experimental, was unlike anything else at the time. Their 1982 debut album, Geography, laid the foundation for what would become known as electronic body music, or EBM. Front 242 didn't aim for the pop charts, and that's exactly what made them so impactful. While bands like Depeche Mode and New Order smoothed out their edges for broader appeal, Front 242 went the other way, embracing the cold mechanical pulse of industrial electronics. Their music wasn't just something you danced to, it challenged you. Throughout the 80s, they stayed fiercely creative, releasing 4 boundary-pushing albums, and then came Headhunter in 1988, a relentless driving track that became a club anthem. With pounding synths, sampled vocals, and a militaristic beat, it captured everything that made Front 242 so electrifying. It remains their most iconic track and a touchstone for the genre. Mainstream fame may have eluded them, but within the industrial and EBM communities, Front 242 are legends. Their influence is etched into the DNA of modern electronic and industrial music. They weren't trying to be pop stars. They were out to forge a movement, and they did. Hüsker Dü. When it comes to bands that reshaped the DNA of modern rock, few were as influential or as underappreciated as Hüsker Dü. This powerhouse trio from Minneapolis didn't just play punk, they reinvented it. Formed in the late 1970s, Hüsker Dü came out of the hardcore scene swinging with ferocious speed, volume, and intensity. But they didn't stay in that lane for long. As the band evolved, so did their sound. They began weaving in melody, emotion, and experimentation, creating something far beyond traditional punk. Their bold approach laid the groundwork for the alternative explosion of the late 80s and 90s. You can hear their fingerprints all over bands like Foo Fighters, Smashing Pumpkins, and even Metallica. Their 1984 double album, Zen Arcade, is often hailed as their masterpiece. Sprawling, intense, and emotionally charged, the record tackled themes like alienation, confusion, and personal growth. It was as much a punk opera as it was an album, and it shattered the boundaries of what punk rock could sound like. Guitarist Bob Mould and drummer Grant Hart, both gifted songwriters and vocalists, created a dynamic tension that drove their music to incredible heights. Thank you for watching. To continue with more content, comment 1 to let us know you're still following. Lisa Lisa and Cult Jam. From the pulse of New York City's streets came a sound that was impossible to ignore. Lisa Lisa and Cult Jam brought the rhythm, the soul, and the swagger that helped define a new musical era in the 80s. Blending pop, R&B, Latin freestyle, and early hip-hop vibes, their music didn't just break boundaries, it filled dance floors. Fronted by the dynamic Lisa Vélez, better known as Lisa Lisa, the group had instant chemistry. Thanks in large part to powerhouse producers and collaborators Full Force, who also performed with the band. Together, they created a sound that was fresh, infectious, and unmistakably urban. Their debut album, Lisa Lisa and Cult Jam, with Full Force, dropped in 1985 and lit up the club scene. Can You Feel the Beat became an anthem, blasting from speakers coast to coast. But it wasn't just dance tracks, they had depth too. All Cried Out, a heart-wrenching ballad, cracked the Billboard Top 10 and showed Lisa's emotional range and vocal power. Hits kept coming with songs like Head to Toe and Lost in Emotion, both of which climbed to #1. Their music dominated radio, MTV, and dance clubs alike. Even years later, their tracks still get bodies moving. Lisa Lisa and Cult Jam didn't just make hits, they created a lasting legacy in Latin-infused pop and freestyle music. The Jesus and Mary Chain. The Jesus and Mary Chain might not have dominated the airwaves in the 80s, but their influence? Absolutely massive. While bands like the Psychedelic Furs found more mainstream traction, the Reed brothers were busy crafting something darker, louder, and far more forward-thinking. Their sound, equal parts noise, melody, and emotional weight, helped lay the foundation for the shoegaze and alternative rock scenes that would explode in the 90s. Their first 3 albums, Psycho Candy, 1985, Darklands, 1987, and Automatic, 1989, are essential listening for anyone who wants to understand the evolution of modern alternative music. Psycho Candy was a bold debut, fusing raw, feedback-drenched guitars with pop sensibilities. But it was Darklands that truly captured the band's emotional depth. Tracks like April Skies and Happy When It Rains managed to be both haunting and hook-filled, balancing grit and grace with striking precision. The Jesus and Mary Chain weren't chasing hits, they were building atmosphere. Their music often felt like a dream veering into a nightmare, full of swirling guitars and melancholic vocals. That unique blend became a blueprint for countless bands that followed. Artists like My Bloody Valentine, Slowdive, and Ride didn't just admire the Jesus and Mary Chain, they ran with their sound. In hindsight, JMC weren't behind the times, they were just a few years ahead of everyone else. Men Without Hats. When you hear Men Without Hats, chances are you instantly think of The Safety Dance. That quirky, synth-heavy anthem, with its medieval-themed video and unforgettable chorus, became one of the defining songs of the early MTV era. But to call them a one-hit wonder? That barely scratches the surface. Hailing from Montreal, Men Without Hats brought a clever, artful twist to the synth-pop scene. Sure, The Safety Dance was a global smash, climbing charts and sparking dance moves in living rooms everywhere. But they followed that success with something just as infectious. Pop Goes the World. Released in 1987, that track reached the top 20 on the Billboard charts. And to many fans, it's an even stronger song. Equal parts playful and profound, all wrapped in irresistible synth hooks. The band's ability to write catchy, melodic pop tunes with lyrical depth gave them an edge in a crowded field. Their first 4 studio albums in the 1980s showed a band unafraid to evolve, blending commentary and whimsy with polished electronic production. And guess what? They didn't fade away. Men Without Hats continued creating music into the 90s, and even well into the 21st century, releasing new material that keeps their signature sound alive. They're not just an 80s flashback, they're a band with lasting rhythm, brains, and heart. Tesla. Tesla may have shared the stage and the era with flashy 80s hair metal bands, but don't be fooled. These guys were cut from a very different cloth. Hailing from Sacramento, Tesla brought a gritty, no-nonsense energy to the scene. While others leaned into big hair, makeup, and theatrics, Tesla showed up in denim, boots, and a passion for real rock and roll. Their sound wasn't built on image, it was rooted in classic rock, blues, and raw talent. Jeff Keith's raspy, soulful voice carried real emotion, while guitarist Frank Hannon delivered riffs and solos with a fire that often flew under the radar, but deserved serious recognition. Their 1986 debut, Mechanical Resonance, was a blast of fresh air. Tracks like Modern Day Cowboy and Little Sister weren't just loud, they were smart, mixing bluesy undertones with hard rock swagger. Then came 1989's The Great Radio Controversy, featuring the heartfelt ballad Love Song and the anthem Hang Tough, songs that proved Tesla could go from tender to thunder in the blink of an eye. Though they didn't top the charts like some of their hair metal peers, Tesla earned a loyal fan base by staying true to themselves. No gimmicks, just great songwriting, killer musicianship, and a commitment to delivering rock the way it should be. Raw, honest, and electrifying. The Replacements. The Replacements, lovingly nicknamed The Mats by their fiercely loyal fans, are a band whose influence has only grown with time. Back in the 1980s, they weren't topping charts or filling arenas, but they were quietly rewriting the rulebook for what rock music could be. Like their Minneapolis peers Hüsker Dü, the Replacements came out swinging with a gritty, punk-inspired sound that radiated energy and rebellion. Their classic lineup, Paul Westerberg on vocals and songwriting duties, Bob Stinson shredding on guitar, his younger brother Tommy Stinson on bass, and Chris Mars on drums, brought a chaotic magic to every track. At first, their music was raw and unfiltered, but over time, something remarkable happened. They evolved. Westerberg's songwriting began to shine with introspective, heartfelt lyrics that still carried that punk attitude, but spoke directly to the disillusioned and misunderstood. As their sound matured, so did their impact. Songs like Unsatisfied, Bastards of Young, Can't Hardly Wait, and Alex Chilton captured a depth of emotion that was rare in the rock scene at the time. Although they never hit it big in the mainstream, the Replacements laid the groundwork for the alternative explosion of the 90s. Today, their music resonates louder than ever, connecting with anyone who's ever felt a little lost, but found comfort in a great song. What song from one of these bands still lives rent-free in your head after all these years? The Time. The Time may have started as a side project under Prince's watchful eye, but make no mistake, this band earned their place in funk history. Created and produced by Prince himself, The Time had access to one of music's greatest minds, but they quickly stepped out of his shadow and developed their own bold, stylish identity. Fronted by the ever-smooth Morris Day, The Time blended funk, soul, and dance pop into a sound that was impossible to resist. And with a powerhouse early lineup that included Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who would later become one of the most successful production duos in music history, the band had serious talent behind the grooves. Throughout the 80s, The Time dropped hit after hit, with infectious tracks like The Bird and Jungle Love lighting up clubs and airwaves. Their funky beats, tight musicianship, and Morris Day's flamboyant, charismatic stage presence made them a standout in the Minneapolis sound movement. They also left a mark on pop culture thanks to their unforgettable appearance in Purple Rain. Morris Day's flashy persona and comic flair brought levity and flair to the film, and helped solidify the band's place in the spotlight, Years later, their cameo in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back reintroduced their music to a new generation, proving that true funk never fades. It just gets funkier with time. Vixen. When people talk about 80s rock, names like the Go-Go's and the Bangles often come up. But if you're talking pure rock and roll power with a glam metal edge, you can't overlook Vixen. This all-female band didn't just break into a male-dominated scene. They kicked the door down, amps blazing. Vixen's self-titled debut dropped in 1988 and made an immediate impact. With a killer combo of hard rock grit and polished pop hooks, they carved out a space in the hair metal scene that was all their own. Tracks like Edge of a Broken Heart and Cryin' soared into the Billboard Top 40 and became MTV mainstays, earning them legions of fans and serious respect from peers and critics alike. The band featured powerhouse lead vocalist Janet Gardner, shredmaster guitarist John Quennemund, bassist Cher Peterson, and drummer Roxy Petrucci, a lineup bursting with talent and charisma. On stage, they were fierce, tight, and unapologetically loud, proving that women could command the same energy and stage presence as any of their male counterparts. By the time their second album, Rev It Up, arrived in 1990, glam metal was fading, but Vixen's influence had already been felt. They were trailblazers, rocking hard, breaking stereotypes, and inspiring a generation of girls to believe they could do the same. Violent Femmes. The Violent Femmes didn't just play music. They defined a whole vibe. Straight out of Milwaukee, this unassuming trio brought something wildly different to the early 80s music scene. A raw, acoustic-driven blend of folk, punk, and alternative rock that felt both rebellious and strangely relatable. Their 1982 self-titled debut album was a game-changer. It wasn't flashy or overproduced. In fact, it was the opposite. With just acoustic guitar, bass, and stripped-down drums, they managed to craft some of the most enduring alternative anthems of a generation. Tracks like Blister in the Sun, Add It Up, Kiss Off, and Gone Daddy Gone became staples on college radio, instantly recognizable for their edgy charm and offbeat humor. Frontman Gordon Gano's distinctive voice and sharp, often angst-filled lyrics struck a chord with listeners who felt out of step with mainstream culture. Their sound was rough around the edges, but that was the point. They weren't trying to be polished. They were honest, weird, and completely themselves. While their popularity never quite exploded beyond the college rock crowd, especially outside the Midwest, that cult status only added to their mystique. The Violent Femmes were the band for the outsiders, the misfits, the romantically frustrated, and decades later, their songs still pack the same raw, relatable punch they did from day one. XTC was never a band that followed the easy path, and maybe that's exactly what made them great. Hailing from Swindon, England, XTC built a reputation as one of the most inventive and thought-provoking bands of the post-punk and new wave era. Their sound, smart, layered, and always evolving. Their lyrics, witty, challenging, and often deeply personal. But behind the brilliance was a rocky road. The band battled financial struggles, turbulent management, and even took a bold stand against their record label. Despite these setbacks, they stayed true to their vision and kept making music that was anything but ordinary. In the US, many casual fans might remember XTC for the controversial 1986 track Dear God, a bold, questioning anthem that stirred the pot and sparked real conversation. But in the UK, they were far more than a one-song wonder. Albums like Black Sea, 1980, showcased their sharp songwriting and creative edge. Songs like Sergeant Rock, Is Going to Help Me, captured the band's unique blend of catchy hooks and clever, often satirical lyrics. Led by the genius of Andy Partridge and Colin Moulding, XTC moved across genres, from jangly guitar pop to lush psychedelic and orchestral rock, without ever losing their identity. They weren't chasing hits. They were chasing art. and that's exactly why their music still resonates today. Wang Chung. Sure, when you hear Wang Chung, your mind probably jumps to "Everybody Have Fun Tonight." And honestly, who could blame you? It's one of the most instantly recognizable pop hooks of the 1980s. But to write them off as a novelty act? That's selling them way short. This British new wave duo, Nick Feldman and Jack Hughes, crafted far more than just party anthems. Between 1983 and 1987, they scored 3 top 20 hits in the US. Dance Hall Days, Let's Go, and of course, Everybody Have Fun Tonight. These weren't throwaway pop tracks. They were smart, polished, and full of catchy melodies layered over synth-driven, emotionally nuanced production. Wang Chung's music had a distinct edge. It captured the energy of the decade while also exploring deeper themes like identity, disconnection, and the surreal rhythms of modern life. One of their most underrated contributions? The atmospheric and hauntingly cool "To Live and Die in L.A., the title track to William Friedkin's 1985 neo-noir thriller. It wasn't just background music, it became part of the film's identity. Feldman and Hughes were more than pop songwriters. They were sonic storytellers. And while they never chased the spotlight like some of their peers, their music has stood the test of time, proving that Wang Chung had far more to offer than one fun night. Did we spotlight one of your forgotten favorites, or miss a hidden gem? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this trip through the underrated sounds of the 80s, be sure to check out more videos in this series. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share Past Not Past with a fellow music lover. Thanks for watching.